And then I looked back at text messages that I had with Blake Neff, which there is a tranche, as they love to say, a trove of these messages that are actually kind of eerie.
Kind of eerie? What do you mean?
The floodgates of pressure opened up. Contributors, I have evidence from these text messages, and Blake Neff ought to tread very lightly with this. And there are a lot of things that have been cleared up for me now, a lot of dots that have been connected for me now, after looking back at all of these text messages between myself and Blake Neff.
What? What does Stu Peters know that he hasn't told the public? It looks to me that Blake Neff might have an agenda put forward by somebody that we don't know, that's tucked in the back corner somewhere, that is placing him in positions. I mean, what is the irony that how could he possibly be placed in positions of the top shows on their networks in the peak of those shows time and time again, 3 times in a row? Tucker Carlson, then Stu Peters at their peaks, then Turning Point USA and Charlie Kirk. It doesn't make sense. And when Stu Peters tells you what he really felt like when he started going through those old text messages, reveals a lot. Blake Neff, I think that there's something secret behind who he is. He looks empty, he acts empty, and I don't trust him. What kind of person is Blake Neff? Who is he? And that's what we're going to try to answer in this video and moving forward, because it is important to know that the Hasbara budget is a lot of money, and nobody said they had to start at this specific date. This could be going on for years. Now, is Blake Neff a foreign agent? I don't know, but he's definitely giving off vibes to more than just a couple people, to a lot of people, millions of people, that he's shady. Why? I guess we'll have to wait and find out. But Blake Neff, something isn't adding up, big dog. And I don't know what it is exactly, but I'm starting to get a good idea.
Anyway, did you see that?
So this is Stu Peters addressing Baron Coleman's call out, saying, hey, Blake used to work for Stu. This is what my sources are saying. Stu Peters goes on to confirm it, but he says something else. Going back through his text messages, how it made him feel, recognizing that Charlie Kirk was going through the same thing, admittedly. And Stu Peters had the chance to wake up, and Charlie Kirk ended up dead. And from his inside camp, from inside Stu Peters' camp, he was getting pushback. You don't want to talk about them. You don't want to go against them. You don't want to start and stir up all of this drama. They're going to come after you, whatever it might be. Stu Peters was being told, not only from the outside, from social media, from independent media, from advertisers, you don't want to mess with them, but inside of his own camp. And he calls out Blake and says, Blake, you might want to be careful where you go from here. Tread lightly, as Stu says, because there might be something that just doesn't meet the eye. So like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Let's see what Stu has to say.
This on Baron Coleman's podcast last night on YouTube, my name came up. Baron Coleman has been doing a lot of really good work on the murder of Charlie Kirk and holding his killers accountable. And anyway, did you see this on Baron Coleman's podcast last night on YouTube? My name came up. Baron Coleman has been doing a lot of really good work on the murder of Charlie Kirk and holding his killers accountable. And anyway, on last night's show, this is what he said about me.
But what is no longer an open question to me is, what was he doing in those intervening years, or at least the intervening months? Because I got a tip. On this show, I kind of asked the question, what was he doing before he went to work at TPUSA? And I finally got a tip.
Now, Baron is talking the first time, or first couple of times he's talked about Blake, is he's saying, I think Blake worked for Stu. And he didn't have confirmation, but Stu here confirms it.
And they said he was working for another content creator. You should look into it. So I did, and I found nothing. I asked around, I could find nothing. So I go back to my source. What content creator are you talking about? Because I keep looking, I've asked around, I can find nobody. And they said he was working for Stu Peters.
Okay, so Baron Coleman, who has been doing, by the way, excellent work surrounding the murder of Charlie Kirk and connecting a lot of dots, talking about a lot of things that probably shouldn't be publicly connected and or talked about.
Why? Why shouldn't they be publicly connected or talked about? This is actually the most important that needs to be talked about. And if he's breaching that thin line of, well, you better be careful, bro. So who's behind that? You better be careful, right? That's important. We're watching people get killed. There's been things that are happening in our society that are unexplainable because people are behind the scenes controlling the narrative and scaring people out of having conversations. So these should be talked about. Stu, I beg to differ. They need to be talked about. Now, he probably means they don't want us to talk about it, which clearly they don't. But what is Blake Neff's role behind all of this? That's what my question is. What is Blake doing? And is he being propped up in between all of these high profile creators and broadcasters and commentators to do a specific agenda for somebody else?
And who he was talking about there was Blake Neff. And yes, I can confirm Blake Neff did work here for me for the Stu Peters Network after his firing or departure, his separation or resignation, however that worked, from Tucker Carlson and Fox News. He was one of Tucker's writers. He was presented as one of Tucker's top writers. In fact, I believe that I recall Blake telling me that in some cases, Tucker would actually just rip and read monologues that were prepared by Blake without even proofreading them. I haven't talked to Tucker about that or independent.
That means that he must have been a damn good writer, and he probably still is. But there's something else there. You know, you gain this trust, and then you can start sliding in information that you don't even realize you're speaking out on because your writer put it in and you trust your writer. And there might be something here, you guys. There really might be. I've got some hair up my butt right now about this. I don't know what to say, but I'm telling you, something is not right about Blake Neff.
Independently confirmed or verified that, but that's how he was presented for me, because at that time around here at this network, I was doing a lot of heavy lifting surrounding somebody who knew that Blake Neff had been dismissed or fired or had resigned surrounding allegations of, I don't know, covert racism, which I could have cared less about. I didn't care.
I don't think that he's the type to care about what Blake's past was if he needed somebody good to help him. He gets called a racist and anti-Semite all the time, so surely he probably didn't even care. I've had some people ask me, like, why didn't Stu speak out against Blake? Well, it's kind of weird to come out and speak publicly about your previous employees. Now, Blake is starting to get into the limelight, I guess you could say, and now is the time he's coming out to speak about it, Stu. So this is when you would come out. It would be weird to do it randomly.
And so I was like, yeah, I need the help. And Blake came on, and actually he did really good work, really solid work. I had no complaints. He was a talented guy. He did what I needed him to do. Anyway, so now fast forward to I'm sitting down with Phil Turney and other surviving members of the Israeli attack on the USS Liberty. At the time, Blake Neff is still working for me. In fact, he's now also working for Charlie Kirk at Turning Point USA. And I didn't remember specifically if it was Turning Point or some other organization until Baron Coleman brought this up on his YouTube show last night. And then I looked back at text messages that I had with Blake Neff, which there is a tranche, as they love to say, a trove of these messages that are actually kind of eerie.
Kind of eerie? What do you mean? You can't be referring possibly to what Charlie might have gone through. Did you go through the same things, Stu? And was Blake involved?
I've been through this before. I think it's worth going through again now. At the time that I published those videos, the floodgates of pressure opened up. And that came both from external sources and internal ones. So externally, of course, it was the corporate media and the press and their hit pieces and sponsors and advertisers on the network cautioning me, questioning me, probing me, and ultimately pressuring me. And also there were internal sources, people who worked for me, employees, people who worked with me, contractors, contributors who were saying, you don't want to do this. You don't want to talk about this. And it was then and there that began this documented on video, real life, real time awakening that we've all been through together when I was J-pilled, red-pilled, all of the discussions that we've had since I sat down with those Liberty survivors.
So he's being pressured from the inside. He already said that Blake Neff was a contributor. Contributors are pressuring him. Outside people are pressuring him. You don't want to talk about that place, that country, those people. You don't want to speak out against them. So why would Blake Neff be doing that? Why was he placing that pressure within his own team and telling Stu? Was he just being a good boy and good helper? And yeah, you might want to watch your back. This is not a good idea. Or like Stu said, is it eerie for a reason? Because Charlie was waking up. Stu had a chance to wake up. Charlie was waking up. Charlie didn't make it. He's still asleep.
Now, we have had evidence that Charlie Kirk was facing pressure externally, of course, which is evidenced by the Bill Ackman mansion pressure session and the $150 million phone call from the sitting prime minister trying to get Charlie Kirk to come back onto the plantation and firmly into this grip. Because we know that, like me, Charlie Kirk, later in the months and weeks and days leading up to his public, was also having a documented, on video, real life, real time awakening. He was discussing the multifaceted occupation of our country, from academia in our institutions of learning to banking and finance to our government, all of its bureaucracies, entertainment, Hollywood, the music industry, etc. And then he was silenced permanently. So we've had evidence that Charlie Kirk was getting pressure, at least externally, but now I have evidence from these text messages, and Blake Neff ought to tread very lightly with this. And there are a lot of things that have been cleared up for me now, a lot of dots that have been connected for me now after looking back at all of these text messages between myself and Blake Neff.
What? What are you talking about? Blake Neff, what were you doing, bro? What were you involved in? What were you making people feel what were you making people feel uncomfortable about? What were you making people feel uncomfortable about, Blake? What kind of text messages are going on up in there, Blake? What kind of pressure were you applying to people, Blake? Why would Stu start to feel eerie about your messages, Blake? This is very concerning. Remember, they are at their limit and they will do anything. It's a little nerve-wracking, to be honest with you. It's a little scary. We don't know who's who anymore.
Particularly relating to these issues involving the influence in American politics and or the influence of spiritually in this country through the introduction of the Schofield Reference Bible and the occupation of our church. And Charlie was talking about these things as well. In fact, he was concerned about that. And we know that because we've seen the text messages that he authored, showing concern that these people may bring ill upon him or even. And he said, as evidenced by the now infamous Harrison Smith tweet, that he was concerned. And if he were to end up, that would be to blame. So anyway, and now you look at everything that has happened immediately in the wake of Charlie Kirk's.
I want to go back for a second. How can we not take this seriously? He literally, how would Harrison Smith have known to put this out unless this is 100% true? Why would he even say this? And Charlie didn't deny it at the time. This was when Charlie was alive, back in August. So how could this be? How did Harrison Smith know this? So what we need to ask ourselves is, who is Blake Neff, and is he working for someone that is trying to put him in positions to be in very influential locations or with people that are hosting a lot of influence at that time? Again, Tucker, Stu, Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk, all at their peak, applying eerie pressure. This needs to go answered. It needs to become a topic that needs to be discussed. Who referred Blake Neff to Tucker? Who referred Blake Neff to Stu, to Charlie Kirk? How did he get these positions? Why was he in the Marine Corps wargaming community? What was he doing getting paid when he wasn't in the military? What about his family? That person was apparently at Fort Huachuca, allegedly. And then combating these arguments against what happened there. Something doesn't add up for me about Blake. And I know that you feel the same way too. That's why you're probably watching this video all the way to the end. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. We're just getting started on this. Look, if you want to join the investigation, go to clubvatra.com, clubvatra.com/Dankster Intel, and join the investigator tier to join our weekly calls. Something's going on, man. Let's figure it out. Peace.